Hello everyone, and welcome to the next episode of Kelly's Quest. Today we're going to be discussing gender markers on state certificates, state IDs like driver's licenses, birth certificates, state issued IDs of all sorts. And I've brought an expert with me. I'm not sure I would say expert completely, but I feel like this person is far more knowledgeable than I am about this topic. And I've asked Aspen Eberhardt to come on. And Aspen is the operations director for Greater Boston PFLAG. And Greater Boston PFLAG has been around for quite a while now, I know, doing a lot of advocacy work for the LGBTQ community. And your latest operation, your latest adventure, your latest tactic that you're going for is you're trying to work with gender markers at the state level. And I would love it, Aspen, if you would kind of just give a brief description of what's going on at the state level with gender markers and what you're trying to do.
So right now what we're trying to do is we're trying to make it so that there is a third gender option on state IDs. So instead of just having the M or F, there would be a third option, which is the gender marker X. And this would be to validate non-binary folks and folks who fall outside of the gender binaries identities on documents, on licenses, on birth certificates, on any sort of documentation, legal documentation.
Now, when this process started, it seems like it's something that's very new to the world. It's like, wait, we're talking about genders more than just male and female. So first of all, that we're having to work with people to educate them on that. And now we're saying, well, we want this to be validated on state IDs.
So we've talked to legislators, we've gotten the word out to call for our people to call their legislators to make sure that they know what's at stake here and know that we want to be able to validate everyone's identities. And in order to get that in front of the House, in front of the Senate, we needed to get legislators to sort of tack their names onto the bill in order to get it pushed into the House and into the Senate. And actually last April it passed the Senate, but it didn't pass in the House. So right now we actually recently, this past September, had a hearing, which I actually spoke at, where we talked to our legislators about gender marker acts and why it's important. And hopefully,
Was this the House or the Senate?
It was both. It was
bicameral. Okay.
Yeah, it was a joint hearing, and we talked to them about the Senate and the House about why it's important, and had a bunch of people from the community come. It was a really great time. There was no opposition, and talk about why it was important to them to be validated by their documents, their identity documents. And it was a really positive hearing, and hopefully the next step would be for the someone from that hearing to take that and actually bring it to the House for the next legislative session.
All right, so I think it's a fantastic idea, because what's happening is we have kids right now that are growing up and they want to know who they are.
Yeah.
And they're searching for who they are. And if we can keep from labeling them as what our society says they have to be, either male or female, and we give them this option of like, listen, that's not the only choices you have.
Oh yeah.
Since it's a state ID, I guess my question is, if I go down to Tennessee and I have an X on my driver's license, they might not even recognize it as a possibility. Are there any types of thought processes going on how to turn this into a national thing?
So far, it's only gone state by state by state.
There's so many things that on the federal level that would make our lives easier, like the
yeah.
Equality Act and things such as that.
Yeah.
So now, with your identity, and I'm not assuming anything, Aspen, would you want to get the gender marker X on a license if it was offered to you? Is that part of your identity?
Yeah, so I identify as non-binary, and I would like to have my ID validate who I am, and I would like to feel like I'm not lying every time I show my ID because it's has a different gender on it. So yeah, I would definitely be one of the first people in line to get the gender marker X on my ID. Unfortunately, I was not born in Massachusetts, so I can't change my birth certificate, but I would still love to have it on my ID.
Would you like to explain what your identity as non-binary means to you?
So to me, it just means that I don't really identify as either binary gender, so either male or female. I, for the most part, feel like I identify somewhere outside of those two categories.
The societal pressures to be either male or female are, I can't even imagine the pushback that you get just in ways that I don't even understand. The non-binary world is, for me, something that I'm being slowly introduced to as well through Camp Aeronautic and through my students at school, because I'm watching the language just grow right in front of us with this, with non-binary, with genderqueer, gender fluid. And these kids are accepting all of these identities, and they're like, wait, there's even more. And I see gender marker X in a way as being more of a stepping stone towards us, more people being able to identify as their true self. It's like almost the way to say, you don't have to be anything that society says except yourself. And it's a huge step. It's a bold step. So with gender marker X, when a child is born, will the parent have the ability to put the X marker on the birth certificate at that point also?
Yeah, they will.
And then later on, if the child chooses to change it to M or F or whatever other options there will be, hopefully more in the future, that option will be available. So I don't really see what the pushback, if any. You said there wasn't much pushback, but I also know we had the Yes on 3 campaign last year.
But I think a lot of the pushback is the same kind of pushback we always see about, you know, sex is binary and IDs say sex, and you need, you know, to have your sex be accurate for XYZ reason. You know, the same sort of things that they say about changing your gender marker in the binary way. They're saying about changing it to a gender marker X, that it's going to make some sort of confusion there, or some sort of confusion that, you know, some, like if you were treated by an EMT, they wouldn't know how to treat you, which is ridiculous because...
As a human?
Yeah, exactly. Like as a human, they would see, you know, whatever is wrong with you and treat that like it there's not much variation between bodies that
are in trauma.
During trauma, that would be that much of an issue.
Right. Yeah. I was reading in the paper, one of the opponents, their argument was, well, what if a police officer, we've got to think of police officer safety. What if a police officer pulls someone over and they've got a gender marker X and they won't even know what prison to take them to? And I'm like, first of all, why is a police officer taking anyone to prison? Because that seems to not understand the judicial system whatsoever, how it works. Like, you know, there's a lot of steps in between your encounter with the police before you finally end up in prison. And I also was trying to figure out if the person was trying to make a correlation that anybody that has a gender marker X deserves to be in prison. Like, it was just a very interesting statement that this person made. Because you're non-binary and a police officer pulls you over, you're going to go to prison, I think is what they were trying to hint at, to scare us a little bit. And these types of tactics are everywhere. And they happen again and again and again. And with the non-binary community, I don't understand. I mean, I understand that you deserve to be human rights. I agree with you at everything, but I'm not non-binary. Just like I'll never understand what it means to be cisgender. And ever will I have a clue what that feels like. And I'll never understand what it means to be non-binary, but that doesn't mean we can't have respect for other people. So with your identity, this is very personal then, this gender marker X.
It's very personal.
And you went and you spoke. What was that like when you stood up in front of the legislature? Was that powerful?
Yeah, it was powerful. I was speaking, I was kind of wearing two hats at the time because I was, representing PFLAG, but I was also representing myself as a non-binary person. And I remember having the conversation with myself and with my boss and with some other local advocates from like MTPC and GLAD, and talking about, what is the best thing for me to say here? Is it to pull out the statistics and pull out, that sort of thing, or is it to tell the real authentic story? So I just talked about myself and my, first time ever going to the DMV and having to deal with, trying to decide which box to check off and all of that mess.
I mean, that's very courageous to do. I mean, but that's what it takes. It takes people hearing our stories.
Yeah.
Once we are introduced, they'll be like, oh, you're just some person.
Yeah.
And once we start introducing ourselves and people start getting to know us, the hope is that things like gender marker X, male, female transition, all of this eventually would just become part of the thread of American society, so we can go about living our lives and 100% being the contributing citizens that we are and feel safe about it.
Yeah.
The Yes on 3 campaign was hard, emotionally and spiritually for our community. But we learned that we're warriors, and we learned how to organize. And it sounds like that is carrying over to this.
Yeah.
And it just seems like in Massachusetts, there's just always been this concept of revolution, of always fighting truly and truly for human equality. I feel so fortunate that I live in this state right now. And I hope that wherever our community is out there in the world, that they find a safe place. We're trying to now spread the safeness out to them from here. And I feel like it's just an expanding bubble almost of what we're trying to do. So the conversion therapy ban you all have been involved with. I know you were involved with the Yes on 3 campaign, the gender marker X. What are some other things that Greater Boston PFLAG is doing right now?
We're also a little bit involved with the Healthy Youth Act, which would make sex ed comprehensive and available for everyone throughout the state, for all students throughout the state. And would include LGBTQ identities in sex ed as well.
That's huge.
Yeah, it was very huge. They did not have that when I was a kid.
No, they did not. But they do now in some schools, I've seen.
In some schools.
So you're working on healthy youth.
Yeah.
Aspen, thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. And folks out there, thank you for dropping in, and we will speak to you later. Bye.